Hello guys and welcome to this week's tutorial on ProRPA.com. Today we'll be talking about how to, like last week we discussed about the application modeler. So this week we'll be discussing that in more detail by actually trying to automate an application. It's gonna be not gonna be a full-fledged example, but it's gonna give you the flavor of it. It's gonna give you a perfect overview, and you should be like after today, you should be at a point where you can actually start automating the applications, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the same example that I just put in for the blog post, right? And if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend to do that first, because that's the legible approach. Just go through the whatever has been put out there and then look at this video, right? If you can't see that, it's in the description of this video, so please feel free to check that out. Okay, so last time we talked about application modeler, right? Now we're going to discuss its use case. And this is the target application that I'm going to try to automate, right? Like there's some staff number and password. So let's go to the application modeler, right? And what happens is for each and every element that you have, there are attributes associated with it, right? And what it means is, just to step back a little bit, and I have discussed this in very detail in the blog post. So what we do is we identify elements on the target application side, which is like this one, this sign-in application in this particular case. And we identify its elements, and then we use them in some of the other actions. So for this, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to launch this application. By launching, what I mean is this is the name that I've given to my business object, and the application that this VJ object is going to initiate is available in here, right? Which is called the training order system.exe. It's an executable file. Right, you can browse it. If there are any command line parameters, you can put them up. We have discussed that before, right? So once you do all that stuff, like let's say in here, you just simply launch it, and now the application is launched, the one that I was showing you earlier. Now, when we launched it from the application modeler itself, it's internally, let's say, connected to it. It's internally connected to the application modeler, and the application in itself. They're internally connected. And why would we need the connection? You can make a very educated guess that it's because the attributes need to come in the application modeler for each and every element that we're going to identify, right? So for an example's sake, I want to get this staff number. I'm going to click on identify. Yeah, I don't want to retain this. And you see, currently it's Windows 32 mode, which is not helping me. So I'm going to put the Alt button, and what Alt button did was it changed the mode. You can see like the highlighter was also like got in purple color. Then we keep pressing the Control button, and we left click on this particular text box, which is the staff number. Now to see if these particular attributes are able to identify this element correctly or not, I'm simply gonna click on this highlight button. If I do, you see this red highlighter, it's only pointed to the staff number, which means they are correctly able to identify the UI element, right? Similarly, I'm going to also identify password. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an element. Let's name it as password, right? And click on identify here. There it is. This is Windows 32, and this one is UI automation mode. And I just by keeping pressing the Control button, I left clicked it, and here are the password attributes, right? In case that there are the attributes come based on the compatibility between the target application and the application modeler. So sometimes when you identify an element and when you try to highlight it, there is a possibility that the same attributes may point to multiple elements. And in that case, what you're supposed to do is either change the compatibility mode whatever the mode is for the identification. Like we have Windows 32, we have UI automation, we have region modes, etc., etc. Or you may have to manually change these attributes as well. Let's highlight this and see if password is, yes, password is being identified accurately, right? So I also want to add an element to the sign in button, right? I'm gonna identify it. You see why I'm putting the namings right? Because that would help me identify later as well. Hitting the Alt and this, sign in, always highlight it and see, yes, sign in, only one element, right? Once you have done that, oh, excuse me, just hit apply and hit OK. Now, what I want to do is, I simply want to write some values in it, like in the staff number and in the password fields. So I'll probably name this stage as login. And you know what? Most of the stuff is done automatically. I'll show you how. Like, these have the headers as value and element, right? We don't need to delve much into parameters and the type, because these will be, like, the type will be populated automatically. Even if it doesn't, it's nothing much of a concern. So simply in the application explorer here, you can see all the elements that you just identified using the application modeler, and all you gotta do is drag and drop it in the element, right? Staff number. What's the value? Because I'm gonna put a text value instead of a, I could have used a data item as well, but right now I'm just putting some static value, which is BP, right? Like the Blue Prism. And then I'm gonna add another element here. I also want to enter password, and let's put the value as password. Okay. So these are the login credentials that I'm putting in, and then I want to click on sign in button as well, right? Make sense? So we use the navigate. Click sign in. And again, you see element, parameters, action, and whatever. You simply take the sign in element, you drop it in the element, and action is, what do you want to do? You want to press it, right? You want to press the button, hit OK. Does that make sense? So what this did was, it's by logging in, what we meant is that it's simply gonna put the credentials and click the sign in button. Let's try and see if it works. BP password, and it clicked on sign in, and yes, we went to the next screen, right? And it's gonna it's probably taking a few minutes. It might throw some error, which we can talk about later. And this is probably one big reason is because like my system is hogging a lot of resources right now, right? So that's why it became a little slow, but the automation worked, right? So that's how we interact with any external application. First, we have to identify its elements within the application explorer, or the modeler, sorry. And then we're gonna use like these stages such as read, write, navigate. There may be like some actions as well if you want to perform some action from another business object and stuff. You may have to perform some calculations as well, right? Which not require probably the calculation stage in itself. This is not something that we need to be too much worried about, right? This error, we're gonna discuss with that later as well. I'll tell you why. But the automation worked, right? So that's the overall process that I wanted to show. What I would ask you is take any application, let's say take any web application, let's say Amazon.com. Try to search for chocolate boxes, right? And try to automate this process using Blue Prism if you have a license. That would be like, you know, if you can imagine, the application modeler is gonna open www.amazon.com, right? And Once the page is open, then what your business object is going to do is it's going to get into the search text box button. It's going to identify that, and it's going to write the value of chocolate box in that text box, and then the next option is going to be to click the search button. Like we have that magnifier thing, so you can definitely do that and try out this automation. It's fairly simple, and everybody has access to internet, so should be fairly doable, right? Okay, I hope that gives a pretty good overview. Next week we'll discuss these in greater detail. We'll also look out for any other possible like we're going to discuss like a lot of these activities, these stages, because that's what is like the core concept for automation in robotics process automation, right? So we're going to discuss these, and if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me either on my email, which is info@prorpa.com, or through comments, through your any sort of feedback on the YouTube channel or on the blog post itself. Feel free to provide that. Share it with your friends. I want to keep the learning experience as easy and accessible to everyone as possible. And happy automating. Thank you very much. Goodbye.